Hi, this is Neonta Spellman with Rainforest Partnership, bringing to you Our Planet, Our Future, a video podcast presented by Rainforest Partnership. Find us at www.rainforestpartnership.org and on social media. Join us as we bring interesting and compelling guests to talk about the environment, climate change, and rainforests. So we're here today at COP23 in Bonn, Germany. What day is it? It's Tuesday, 14th
Yes.
of November, 2017, with Leila. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself and talk about a little bit about who you are and why you're here today.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Leila Salazar-Lopez, and I am the executive director of Amazon Watch. But I'm also a mother, and I am also Mexican-American, Chicana, woman from Southern California. And I also am a defender of Mother Earth. And I think it's important that being here in this space, it's not that we all want to just travel around the world to come to a giant global conference. I'm here because I have small children, and I'm very concerned about their future. I'm very concerned about the planet that we're going to leave for them. And so in this time of global climate crisis, I think it is our responsibility to do everything that we can possibly do to protect our planet, Mother Earth, the remaining forests and ecosystems of this planet, for our children and for everybody's children and for all life on this planet.
Well, that was a wonderful way of introducing yourself. I think if I had talked about you, I would have just said your name and the fact that you are executive director of Amazon Watch, and how wonderful it is to be here with you. But the fact that you are identifying yourself as a mother, as somebody who lives on this planet, and the fact that all of us everywhere need to be doing something about climate change. It was interesting. One of the speakers today talked about how his generation, therefore actually it's almost our generation, that in 50 years we've destroyed more than in the entire 5 billion years for this planet. I don't think that's quite true, because I think the Earth has gone through some very violent
Times.
but not created by humans.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do you think? We've been coming to these COPs, you've been coming to these COPs, and at times it's very hopeful. You listen, you see so much that's happening so much faster, and then at the same time there's so many disappointments as well. And now nature is taking its course, right? We're losing more forests because of what climate change is doing to the forest.
Exactly. I was actually on a panel this morning about primary rainforests, and one of my colleagues was talking about that. We a lot of times we talk about the threats to rainforests, the threats to the Amazon, deforestation, and we should be. We should be talking about, especially the new threats to the rainforest: oil and gas development, mining, agribusiness, mega dams. We should be talking about those things, but we should also look back at degraded land. We can't forget about the degradation of the forests, and we need to reforest. We need to protect the remaining primary rainforests that are intact on this planet, and we need to reforest. Because when those forests lay bare, yes, they start regrowing, but they also are like a match for forest fires, especially when there's drought. I come from California. We are still in a major drought, which was exemplified just a few weeks ago with our massive fire. And the Amazon is also in a major drought and is burning. So we have to always remember that the earth is crying out. Mother Earth is crying out. And that's, what we have done, our humanity has done, especially over the last 100 years.
It is, and most of it for the Amazon, it's really the last 50 years.
In the last 50 years, the global scientist.
That's in my lifetime.
Antonio Nobres says, we've already deforested and degraded, 40% of the Amazon. And, he says if we get to 50, we're in a lot of trouble. So, yes, we have to stop further deforestation and we have to reforest.
Do you have a dream? My dream is to get to zero deforestation. I went to saying net zero deforestation by 2030. And sometimes I think, it's so crazy to think about that. But why would it be crazy? Why can't we be a planet? Why can't we be a humanity that basically says this is so important to us? It's important to our very survival and everything else that's with us, that we do something about it.
We have to dream and we have to hope. I mean, if we don't, we work with people in the Amazon, right?
Yes.
When we are in the Amazon, we wake up early, we drink guayusa, we talk about our dreams. And that is what, the communities that we work with do. And dreams are powerful. We have to dream. If we don't have any dream, then we're going to lose hope. And if we lose hope, then what's the point?
Yeah, we wouldn't have had the children we've had.
If we lose hope, then we would just leave it to governments and corporations to fix our problems. And they're not going to do that. I mean, I come from the United States. I'm not going to trust our federal government to solve our problems. In fact, just yesterday, when the United States, showed their face here. And,
I completely missed it, by the way.
I mean, just, what they're proposing is just ludicrous.
Yes.
Clean fossil fuels, clean nuclear, clean coal. I mean, we're done with that. We're done with that. We're moving forward for renewable,
the
transition to renewable energy, protecting forests, respecting Indigenous people's rights, promoting Indigenous-led conservation. We're not going to stop that. We're going to keep going forward.
It's actually too late now, if you think about it.
For the governments. And then, and ironically, yes, we're here at a COP that is a massive negotiation of governments to implement the Paris Climate Agreement. I mean, they need to hear from the civil society. They need to hear from the people, or else they're going to do the minimum. Because, in fact, the Paris Agreement doesn't get us to 1.5 degrees. If we've just followed the minimum, we're beyond two. We're beyond two, and we're going to be living in a very different world, and our children are going to be living in a very different world. So, so we're, we do have to have hope. And, one of the things that really gives me hope is women's leadership. I was just at an event yesterday that was, women's voices and women's leadership and women's solutions. And we're half the population, and so it is
just
time
a
for
little
us,
more than half, I think.
Well, that's good. We are our voices and solutions. I mean, we already do more than half the work, we work and we work at home. We know how to get the job done, and it's time for, society to listen and respect women, listen and respect Indigenous peoples, listen and respect the youth. That's what gives me hope, because I do see just in the last couple years, young people really stepping up, and I think that's going to make the change that we need to see in the world.
And we've seen some really powerful women coming forward, haven't we? Certainly in the Indigenous world. They're here, some of them. You, of course, hang out with them a lot more than most of us get to.
We're one of the things that Amazon Watch, one of the things that we do is advance Indigenous solutions, right? We work to stop Amazon destruction, but we also work to promote climate justice and advance Indigenous solutions. And that also means advancing women's solutions and the voices of women. And so we for many COPs, we have been supporting COPs and IUCN congresses and, people's climate marches. We've made sure that, if there's going to be any talk about climate, then we should ensure that Indigenous peoples from the Amazon and women and youth as well are participating, and that their voices are heard. And so we are here with a delegation of women from the Ecuadorian Amazon, and with new leaders so that they can also see this process for the first time and go back to their communities and share what they've learned and share that they've been promoting their solutions here, protecting living forests, keeping fossil fuels in the ground, supporting women's empowerment, and new projects like the Haku project that we just heard about from Leo, and legal strategies and reforestation, like we just heard from Ronald Suarez from Peruvian Amazon. So it is really essential that Indigenous people's voices are heard here. The Indigenous Caucus, I know, has been meeting every day, and to talk about traditional knowledge and get that implemented within the process. And there's some disappointments there, but I would say it's always, for us, it's always an inside and outside strategy. There's, we have to be on the inside, but then also we have to be on the outside and really speak truth to power. And that's what we did yesterday at the protest of the U.S. administration's climate plan, and had that protest, and had and also really call out when we know those who tout being climate leaders, like what they're really doing. It's like we can't, we have to hold them to account. And so it's good to have both an inside and outside, but to really always kind of be thinking about what we really want.
Right.
Of course, we're going to say no to new expansion of fossil fuel projects in the Amazon. Of course. But we also want to say we want just renewable energy solutions. Not just in California,
two sides,
and not just in California, and not just in Germany. We want it everywhere. Right. We want it in the Amazon, and that's why we are, working on solar projects for energy, communications, for transport. And today we were just talking about cooking, because a lot of the communities use firewood,
right,
for cooking. And, Ronald was just talking about that. He said, like a lot of the women who are the ones who are making the food and in front of the fire half the day, they're getting respiratory illnesses.
And you know what I've seen? Have you seen them use little bits of plastic to light the fires? And it's I was thinking about this yesterday because, of course, it feels like a great thing, fast way to sort of kindle a fire. And without knowledge, how would you know?
Yeah.
And so we're sort of poisoning in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Small things.
Yeah, we were literally just talking about that, and he says, "What's a solution for this?" I was like, "There's solar cookers. I know there's solar stoves.
Yes. How do we get those out?
Let's get those to the Amazon."
The UN Foundation has had a huge initiative. How do we? That's right. It's not so focused on the Amazon that I know of, and so perhaps that's the kind of thing we're supposed to do.
Let's do
when
it.
You come to a place like here. So how long have you been at Amazon Watch now? My gosh, I've lost count of how long I've known you, Leila.
Well, originally, I worked as a campaigner. In 2002, I started working on the campaign to hold Chevron accountable in the Ecuadorian Amazon. That was really my passion from the first time going to the rainforest and seeing the devastation caused by Texaco, now Chevron. I mean, I went first to the Ecuadorian Amazon to study tropical ecology and ethnobotany. And then I became an activist because I saw what these companies had done, and just without any accountability, without any responsibility. And so I started working on that, and then became the program director in 2010, and became the ED 2.5 years ago. So it's been a while.
What are your favorite things about being executive director?
My favorite things about being an executive director are, one, just working with an amazing team. Our team is, small but mighty. Love you all. Small but mighty, so committed, so passionate. I mean, I think Amazon Watch, I really value. Yes, of course, because, I've spent half my life working with Amazon Watch and our allies, but we have long-standing relationships, with partners that we met, 19 that our founder and board president now, Tosa Sultani, people she met in 1996, people I met in 2002, people, that, we've been working with for, 21 years.
That's great.
And so we have long-standing relationships with the partners. So they're, not just, communities that we work with on campaigns, on communication projects, but they're our friends. They're like our family. And so, and then the staff also become family. And half our staff have been there for 10 years or more.
That's
so
true.
we've been around a long time. And so, we're like family. And of course we'd like to grow and we'd love to be able to do more, but, but I think that really is what I love the most, is just like being able to continue working with our longtime partners and our staff and our Indigenous and NGO allies, just there, we all, work together, learn from each other. And so.
And really, our Achwa project wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for you guys. It was when Gregor was working and introduced us to the Achwa and was sort of the go-between, as it were, saying, okay, they're looking for an alternative income source and
that's really, I think that's
looking
also
for the allies and sort of getting. You're always doing that, leveraging.
Yeah. I like to say that Amazon Watch, actually another one of my favorite parts, just like today, it's just like, you're working on this, you should meet so-and-so, and you should meet this person. And just the bridge building, I think is really important, because there's no way Amazon Watch is going to save the Amazon, there's no way, Rainforest Partnership is going to save the Amazon. We have to all
work together.
And none of us are going to save the Amazon. We are, the indigenous
even
people
the
who
by themselves
live there, can't even save the Amazon. Yes, they are the ones who live there, and so they should be the ones, who should be supported to protect their rights and territories on their lands. But it is a collective effort. Of support for the community, support of their rights, their territories, their visions, their dreams, their strategies, their demands, their calls. But then, a myriad of organizations that are working on advocacy, from advocacy to alternative development, legal strategies, communications, so many different ways. That's one of my favorite parts too.
Yes.
Linking people up.
What's your hope for looking to 2020? Coming out of the COP, there are people already sort of focusing on the next COP because we're talking, the folks talking about, yes, now it's about implementation. We've had some successes, a lot further to go in other areas. But what is your hope for 2020? What do you think? If you were we were dreaming.
Well, I would go back to the zero deforestation by 2020. At least commitments. There,
if we get a pledge by 2020,
there was a global, there was a New York commitment on forests, and there was there's a zero deforestation goal. There are many companies and municipalities and have signed on to this, and we need governments to commit to zero deforestation. And I think, considering that Indigenous peoples have a caucus here, I think that it would be by 2020, in the next few years, I think there needs to be a lot more involvement by Indigenous people, communities, frontline communities, women at the table, not just on the outside, but really at the table, to really be a part of the process, to say, this is why we're saying what we're saying. This is why we're saying, you can't continue extraction on Indigenous people's lands. This is why we're saying, you can't be a climate leader if you're continuing to expand the fossil fuel frontier or the nuclear, age. That's not consistent with being a climate leader.
Right.
So I think more people at the table, not just in caucuses and working groups, but really more involvement, I think would be a hope for, at least for the COP process.
Yes.
Right? At least for the COP process. But beyond that, I think, we would love to see, some considerations of debt for nature swaps. I think just even like that initial conversation because if you really look at what the threats are to the Amazon right now and these industrial development projects that are taking place, a lot of the financing and the projects are being promoted are projects and financed by the Chinese government.
And the countries have no choice because they have huge, massive debts that they've amassed.
Exactly. And so, when the Ecuadorian government is $20 billion in debt to China and they have an oil for debt loan, we need to really think seriously about how is, a country that has the most biologically diverse rainforest on the planet, how are they going to protect that rainforest, and pay back a loan in oil like that? It's just inconsistent. So I think by 2020, I hope that
we'll have some shifts.
That there's some shifts there. And I think, and there is, I work with indigenous people of the North and South, and they remind us that have trust in the fact that there's indigenous worldviews and consciousness is shifting, for justice, and we might be going through really dark times. I'll just speak for myself in the United States. But it's not just in the United States. It's also in Brazil. It's also, in Europe. It's also in Mexico. It's in many parts of the world. Many places are going through dark times, and you kind of have to go through the darkness to come out of the light, to come into the light. So I have hope that there'll be some changes.
So you remain
by 2020.
Optimistic.
Yeah,
That's
I have
good.
to.
I know this is
like
what
we said. I have
day,
children.
yes.
I have to have hope.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Yes.
So.
Well, thank you so much, Leila. I'm glad we've got this time. I know, and having this time as well. Yes.
So if you want to know more about our work, go to AmazonWatch.org.
Yes, a great organization, and thanks to them, we have a project. The Atra project actually came about, and one of these days we'll do a trip together too.
We'll have to have 12 days to get to
go in there and come back. Yes. And it can take up to 5 days when the water's really low. So, yeah. Well, great.
Yeah.